Brilliance Audio presents Ballistic by Marco Close, performed by Angelo Di Loretto. Zephyr streaked through the void faster than Aiden had ever traveled before. Faster than most people have ever traveled before, he corrected himself as he watched the holographic plot on the top bulkhead. They were hurtling down the dotted trajectory of the current shortest time traffic lane from Rhodia to Pallas, the small mountain planet that made the most distant orbit around the system's sun. The acceleration readout next to Zephyr's icon showed the improbable number of 15G. Most civilian ships maxed out at 7 or 8, and even warships rarely managed more than 10. At some point, gravmag generators demanded an infinite amount of energy, and then the laws of physics kicked in and imposed a hard speed limit. T-8 for turnaround burn, Maya, the pilot, announced from her workstation up on the command deck. She was fully in her element, both hands on the flight controls, comfortably reclining in her gravity couch. Aiden had been on Zephyr for 3 months, and this was the first time they were pushing the engine hard enough against the gravmag generator's limit to feel the weight of uncompensated acceleration. Zephyr was roughly the same size as Cloud Dancer, the ill-fated ship that had carried Aiden off Rhodia 3 months ago, but that was where the similarities ended. Cloud Dancer had been old and worn, with the marks of many years of interplanetary travel. Zephyr looked far more polished. Everything on board worked the way it had been designed, and nothing was worn out or broken. It was easily the most modern ship Aiden had ever seen, although his sample size was admittedly small and consisted mostly of well-used Grecian Navy ships. His berthing compartment was just as small as the one on Cloud Dancer, but it was much more comfortable, with well-thought-out storage cubbies and a retractable toilet and sink combo. It was claustrophobic compared to the officer-sized residence unit in the Rhodian prison arcology, but Aiden had gotten used to the smaller space. In a way, it was cozier than his old residence unit, which had always felt empty and impersonal, because he never had enough belongings to fill it up and make it his own. "What's the status of our slow friends?" Captain Decker asked. Next to Aiden, Henry Siboniso, the ship's first officer, used the controls suspended in front of his gravity couch to increase the scale of the holographic plot projection until it showed most of the space between Zephyr and Pallas. He highlighted a ship icon labeled OMV Lady Mina and clicked his tongue. "They're not even at turnaround yet," Henry said. "Going down the track at a steady 10.2. Unless they find an extra notch or two on their throttle, we'll beat them by almost an hour." Decker chuckled softly. "Well, the bet was their idea. Not that we stand to win much after we fill up again at Pallas." "We could back off a G or two," Maya suggested. "Save some reactor fuel. We'll still beat them. It's first past the inner marker, not first one to dock." "Crew poll," Decker said. "It's everyone's money, after all. Sound off. Who wants to save a few thousand on the fuel bill? We'll stand to make profit on the bet if we don't blow the whole wage yard at the drive cone." "Not me. I'll kick in a few hundred if I have to," Maya said, without taking her eyes off the control screen in front of her. She looked like she was having way too good of a time to even consider her own proposal. "If you're going to show off, might as well show off big," Henry said. "I don't care for this extended high-G shit, but I can suffer it for a little while longer, I guess," Tristan Dorn said from his gravity couch behind Aiden. He was the ship's medic and the oldest member of the crew, a tall and lanky Oceanian in his 50s with a craggy face and short white hair. Aiden found it liberating that almost everyone on Zephyr was his own age or older, and far more experienced. Only Maya, the pilot, and Tess, the engineer, were not in their 40s yet. It was the first time since his early days in the Blackguards that he was the most junior and least experienced member of a team. But there was a certain freedom in taking orders instead of giving them, in learning instead of having to be responsible for someone else's development. As their new linguist, he'd been hired to do all the talking and listening whenever the crew needed someone who was completely fluent in Rhodian or Grecian. Universal Translator AI was incredibly useful for everyday interactions between people from different cultures, But even with quantum state computing, it couldn't catch nuance, dialect, or inflection as well as a multilingual human could. And Zephyr sometimes moved in circles where people didn't want to be easily understood by outsiders.